Hi.
Yep. So you got an invite, right?
I did.
Yeah. It's as simple as ABC. Um. So if you can share the link with your friends as well. So we go through, I don't know. Um.
See.
Dun, 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 dun. Just a bit. Dun, 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 dun. I I think. All right. Oh, hello, Desola. All right. How you doing today? I've asked you this, but people watching they probably want to hear that. So how you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I am good. I'm excited actually. I'm excited to talk with you more and introduce you to people and get to share a story. So that's really exciting for me. It's a good way to start. Hi,
Well,
Kasi.
thanks for inviting me.
Oh, thanks for accepting my invitation, and I'm really, really honored, and thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, welcome everyone listening. This is the More Sibyl podcast, and this is one of the initiatives of the show where we bring live guests. Try to do it every Saturday, but there's been a pause for a while due to some, we have not had guests for a while just for because of conflict issues and all that with scheduling. But today I'm excited to have today's guest with us today. That sounded very repetitive. I'll go ahead and just introduce her. Her name is Muloongo Muchelemba. I should have asked you how to really say your name. Did I say that? Did I do a good job of that?
Yeah, it's Malongo.
Mulongo,
Yeah, it's
Mulongo.
correct.
And she's had, I say again?
Oh, I said you were right. You're right. You pronounced it correctly.
Ah, good. You know how African names you have to like stress some certain words. I didn't know if Zambia was part of that. But anyways, she's had an international upbringing as a diplomat's child and has lived in 9 countries in Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. She has an economics degree from the University of Zambia and a philosophy, politics, and economics, that's PPE degree from Oxford, where she was a Rhodes Scholar. She's also a chartered management accountant. She previously worked in the oil and gas industry and then management consulting in London. She then joined an emerging markets bank and has worked in Zambia, South Africa, UAE, and now currently lives in Singapore. Outside of work, Molongo enjoys debating political issues. I can tell you that for sure. She likes travel, she likes photography, she likes fashion, she likes art and promoting all things African. You forgot to add your Formula One racing. You should put that
Oh,
on
that's
your
true. But my
hobbies.
team is not doing very well, so
Oh
I should.
yeah, yeah, the Italian one.
Yes, Ferrari.
Yeah, this Ferrari. I think I saw that. She published her first book, The Millennials Guide to Work, in June of 2018, which can be purchased. I'm going to send you guys a link. Well, now we're going to explore just, career change, fear of failure, her life in Singapore, and then talk a lot more about her book. So everyone join me in welcoming Mulongo to the podcast. Hello again. All
Hi.
right. We thought we are gonna start off your day, guys, by singing one of her favorite songs. And and when she requested this song, I hadn't gotten to the end of the last page of her book because I was like, why does she want to sing Katy Perry song? And then after reading her book, I was like, oh, okay, this makes a lot of sense. It's the lyrics. So we're gonna do Katy Perry's Roar, and I will try not to butcher it. All right, so let me know when you're ready. Should I
Oh,
should I should I click
you're
on it
doing
and then
it
you
right.
start singing with me? Okay.
I'm singing Britney
Oh
style.
goodness. You know how you're like doing stuff and then all of a sudden there's like pressure.
Thanks,
All right.
Desola.
I will try not to. Mm. Okay, home, almost there. Okay. I'm floating like a butterfly, singing like a bee and my stripe. I went from zero to my own hero. You held me down, but I got up. Already brushing out the dust. You hear my voice, you hear that sound. Like thunder gonna shake the ground. You held me down, but I got up. Get ready, cause I've had enough. I see it all, I see it now.
Now.
I got the eye of a tiger, the fire.
It's
Take
not
me
pronounced
to the
though.
fire, cause I am a champion. And
Champion.
you're not a hippie.
You're doing better than I am. Just let you sing.
I sing better in the shower. Maybe we should have recorded this in the shower.
We should have. I love this song though.
It's such an upbeat song. Well, there you go. Thank you for listen. That's a very good way to get started. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thank you, Desola. Thank you, Balaji, and thank you, Sister Todimu, my cousin. All right, so let's get started. Born in Zambia and then traveling all over the world. Okay. As a Nigerian, one of the things well, not as a Nigerian, but my last episode that featured an Egyptian, and I realized that as a Nigerian, we weren't taught so much about many other African countries. You know, for the longest time, for example, I was thought Zambia and Zimbabwe were the same thing. This was until like primary school. I know. It's like, and I don't know if it's like the Nigerian superiority we have. When people think about Africa, they just think about Nigeria and other countries. I see Nigeria, I see Ghana as a tiny blob, and then the other countries being around us, and then every other country is like one melting pot. So why do you think? Okay, I'm gonna ask you first. Why do you think Africans aren't taught so much about other African countries?
I think it depends on your perspective, though. I've always been, but maybe not connected to West Africa because it's so far, but to Southern Africa, East Africa, there's always been a sort of a view that we're just we're 55, 56 countries, depending on how you count it. But I've never thought of us as one big continent. I've always been aware of the different countries, cultures. But you're right. Generally, as Africans, we would rather go to London than go to Mali.
I know. Our tourism really sucks when it comes to that. And you have a different upbringing than most Africans you come across. Because you grew up in a very, how do I put it? Your dad was a diplomat. I don't know if he's still a diplomat, but you grew up in such an environment that was very dynamic. And then your parents are very involved in, politics and so many cultures around you. So for you probably knew a lot more than, someone like me growing up in Nigeria. But can you tell us a little bit about Zambia and what it was like growing up in Zambia?
So Zambia is a great place. I'm biased though because it's home, and I have been to Lagos, so I can probably compare. It's much smaller than Lagos, or Nigeria. We have 17 million people currently. It's
I know.
very small compared to you. But it's just it's quieter than most African countries. It's just a really chilled place to be. It's becoming a bit more hectic, but it's chilled. We've got tons of land, tons of space. So things we take for granted, like having a big garden, which I didn't see a lot of in Lagos, things that we take for granted. But it's a really nice place to live, generally very safe compared to quite a few African countries. But we have the same issues that Africa has, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Corrupt leaders.
Poor leadership. We have, patchy roads, no power sometimes, no water. But you learn to adapt and you always have to focus, I think, on the positive. So when I was living in Dubai, for example, and you're stressed about being so close to Iran and whether there'll be some war, you don't have that in Africa. When you think about hurricanes and earthquakes, I'm next to Indonesia now, we don't have that. So we're very lucky, and I don't think we always appreciate that.
I've said that before, that we don't have like we don't have like a lot of disasters that can overthrow us as far as being unstable politically or economically. Take, for example, South Korea. They live next to North Korea. Any day now, something could go wrong, a button could be pressed, and boom, the island is gone. We don't have any threat of war, but we have like we have like politicians that are almost as, if not worse than those natural disasters and people that we talked about. And I guess everyone has just, there's always something, I guess. But ours, I feel like if we, I don't know. Before, I'd always used to make the cardinal mistake of saying the people need to do better. But now I'm beginning to change my story and say, no, I think it's the politicians and just the kind of parasitic constitution we have, where it just makes it okay to like loot an amount of money. So now the elections are coming up in my country, as you know, and of course there's so many things they're talking about. If you vote for me again, I'm not going to disappoint you. And I'm like, what the heck, you know? And yeah, so that's always a recurring theme in African countries. And I don't know. I feel like Rwanda is probably changing that.
It is, because you have a leader who's concerned about his legacy and about developing his country. And so Rwanda is special, and they will develop far faster than most African countries that didn't have a genocide or, the tragedy that they faced in the 90s. The rest of us.
I know.
Well, you see, my point on leadership, and I had a debate with a few people on Twitter this week about corrupt leaders. And yes, our leaders generally across Africa are not great. But one thing that we forget is when you think of our culture and our day-to-day lives, corruption is so ingrained in our own culture that we don't actually really think about it. And then we're surprised when our politicians steal. So like in Zambia, we've had 2 big scandals where people have been taking money that the donors had given us for education programs and social protection programs. And then there's this whole scandal about, how could this happen? But the people who are stealing that money are not the minister or the deputy minister or the immediate inner circle. It's like my peers, your uncle, your auntie are the ones who are stealing. And they're not stealing the way we think that someone goes to the bank and cashes a big check. They're stealing it by pretending to be going for meetings so they get per diem. They're inspecting facilities that don't exist. So they say we have to go and look at a project, and it's an excuse to get money. We don't pay to get driver's licenses generally in Zambia. You pay for someone to either take the test for you or you just buy a license. So I'm like, how can you sit there and throw shade at our politicians when you're doing the same thing? That's where it comes from.
Yeah.
So we say our politicians are corrupt, but number one, we are the same. Number two, we're the ones voting for them. So I think the accountability to start with us as well. But yeah, our politicians are terrible generally. It's disappointing.
Yeah. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. I feel like there's no culture of there's no reward system for like doing good or doing bad. You can always get away with it. So basically, if you steal like $1, you could go to jail. But if you steal like $1 million, you could become president or minister in my country. That's what people usually say. And for example, in Asian cultures, like for example in Korea and Japan, where there's this culture of shame, where if you did something and they found you out, most of them just commit suicide because your family line is like gone. We don't really have that culture of, I don't know what the word is, but basically I definitely agree with you. There's corruption. I feel like Nigeria is inherently corrupt, and it starts from, I don't know if it's a top down thing or top bottom thing or up, I don't know, the reverse of that, where maybe it's what our leaders do and everybody's just trying to cut corners and monkey see, monkey do.
True.
Anyways. True. So for those that might be curious about Zambia, what's, in addition to you said a lot of lands you have and just how peaceful it is, and I find that you guys have really tried a lot, given that you have like DRC that has undergone a lot of instability in the past, it hasn't really affected you, if I would say.
We have refugees from the Congo in Zambia, but the reverse has been that because a lot of companies can't go into the Congo to set up businesses, they do that on the border on the Zambian side. So we've actually benefited by supplying the Congo with basic stuff like food and equipment and stuff like that. But we're very close. The Katanga province, which is right next to Zambia, and Zambia are pretty close. Not so much the rest of the country.
No, I mean, those are landlocked areas. I use the example because, even though the civil war in Liberia was in Liberia, it affected Sierra Leone a lot because of, the how close Sierra Leone and Liberia was. But I found that your country has really been, stable. Now, what are Zambian people like? Like, if we're to meet one, and this is going to be a general statement, by the way, but how would you define the Zambian spirit or the Zambian people as a whole?
So we're known to be very friendly, very easygoing. Everyone speaks English. Well, most people, because it's the official language. But Zambians are generally very friendly, very helpful, very easygoing. Is universally what people say about us. So I'm not making that
Oh,
up.
okay. I think it's the African thing. They will say the same about Nigerians, except that Nigerians are also loud, which
Yes.
you might know already.
The
Are
Nigerians
Zambians loud too? Do you
are
guys like make loud parties?
not as loud as Nigerians because when I'm at work, I used to get work in Dubai, and my Nigerian friends will come to my space. The tempo would rise by many notches. So Nigerians are generally loud.
Ah, yeah, Nigerians, we're a bunch of loud, boisterous people. There's actually a song that I know from your country, and it's Dununa Reverse by I think is forget his name, JK.
Yeah,
Yeah, Dununa Reverse. I like that song.
you do. It's the
Dununa
song
Reverse.
that got
Yeah, yeah.
the main party elected. So I'm not a big fan
Oh,
of it.
really?
Yeah.
Ah, see, I don't know about the political landscape of your country. I know the video had, some market women, doing some stuff, but I didn't catch that side of it. But thanks for letting me know that. So,
So you're
so
allowed to
growing
like.
up I focused on the song. I didn't even know there was a political undertone to it, and she told me that because I'm not from Zambia. But thanks for adding to that, my knowledge base. So what age were you when you left Zambia for a while, and what was your first country outside of Zambia to live in?
Belgium when I was 2, I think.
How long were you there for?
For a year or two, I can't remember. I was really young.
Uh, and then where next? Well, apart from Zambia, what country have you spent the major chunk of your life? Would that be London?
Yeah, the UK. I spent about 12 years in the UK in total.
Probably that's probably one of your favorite. I think I read that in your book. You love London a lot.
I do, but I had a love-hate relationship with London. It can be really hectic, and by the time I was leaving, I was really tired of it. But I go back every year, so it's my second home.
Yeah, yeah. Um, what was life like? I mean, so I want to imagine that as a diplomat's child, there's so many operating and just moving everything around. What would you say in addition to that? What would you say was the most difficult adjustment you had to make just traveling around these countries, knowing that you might not stay there for long?
Yeah, I think the hard part is that you make really good friends, and then you know that in a few years you're going to have to say goodbye. So that was always really difficult. And I think that's why my closest friends are those friends that I've had in Zambia and probably the UK, because that's where I spent a good chunk. I mean, I spent in total probably about 20 years in Zambia on and off. And so my closest friends are either Zambian based or UK based.
What was the most exciting thing about being a diplomat's child? Like, in addition to traveling and seeing places around the world and having your passport filled with so many, do you even have a passport? Are you guys, because I heard you guys have like, sometimes you don't even have passports.
That's
You could
not
just
true.
flash a badge.
No.
Or maybe you have a special passport.
No, you have
Is
a
that
you
it?
have a passport. And my parents had diplomatic passport. Well, my dad had a diplomatic passport, but the rest of us have normal passports. But you do have a diplomatic card, and I still have, I think, two of my cards. I still have my Italy one and my Mozambique one. And it was just the pass that you flashed if you were stopped by the police, and then they asked you for ID. You would flash that, and they would leave you alone.
Oh, that's so cool.
It was cool for my friends.
So
Brothers
I
were
didn't,
always in trouble, but for me, it made no difference. I didn't really need to get out of trouble.
because you're a good child, that's why.
Yeah, I tried.
All right. So now you live in Singapore.
Yes.
So tell us about Singapore a little bit, and then yeah, and how long have you been living there?
So I've been living in Singapore for 11 months now, almost 11 months. And I think we talked about this when we first met. I said one of the things about Singapore that amazed me when I moved here was I felt like I should have come here much sooner and not spent so long in the UK, only because you can, as an African, you can relate to what Singapore has been able to achieve. So it's an amazing
Yeah.
place. city-state. It's very clean. It's very well developed. It's very well maintained. You can see that the people take great pride in what they've achieved. There's a lot of social order, so it's super safe. You can leave your house unlocked. I don't do that. I'm African. You can't change my stripes.
Or you can leave your house unlocked.
People do that. People do that in Dubai as well because no one's going to steal, right? But I'm like, I'm too used to locking my door, so I always lock my house. But people leave it unlocked. It's incredibly safe. The people are really nice. So it's been a really great 11 months.
Oh wow! I mean, I think if you think about the way Singapore, when you think about Singapore, I think let's focus on modern Singapore. I know like Lee Kuan Yew, like he did a lot, but he did a lot to help Singapore develop into what we know now as a, developed country. But imagine how many years he had to spend. So my question for you would be this, like, knowing that especially African countries, some African countries, we're used to having presidents that don't want to leave. Take, for example, the dude in Cameroon. They want to stay there forever. How do we balance, longevity as far as political aspirations versus having somebody that can do the job, but you have to let them stay for this long so that their policies are not turned over by the next person? I don't know if that question makes sense.
No, it does make sense. I mean, I can't remember how long Lee Kuan Yew was prime minister for, but he obviously, I mean, the tension between him and, say, Paul Biya in Cameroon, who's been there for decades, and still wants to be president.
He's still running, yeah.
Well, he ran, and I think the election was a sham, even though the official Africa Union election observers
transparency,
fine,
yeah.
But the point is, I think your time should be a meritocracy. Like, you should justify your continued stay by what you deliver. And we currently don't have that across most African countries. I would say the exception is South Africa is an interesting place because even though it's in Africa, it's always been sort of in between first and third world, though it's sliding from its more first world to becoming more like the rest of Africa. But in terms of the institutions, those are still quite robust. Kagame is an interesting one because he's very much, I would say, of all the leaders, he's very close to what Lee Kuan Yew was for Singapore. In that he has a vision, he has the drive, and he's instilled discipline in his people to actually achieve what he wants to achieve. So I read somewhere recently that Rwanda had sent people to Singapore years ago to learn how they developed and are learning from Singapore, actively learning from Singapore. And that's why they're realizing some of the development gains that we're seeing. So they started a long time ago. It didn't happen overnight, right? So they've been picking up ideas from the best, and Dubai as well. So the UAE came to Singapore to learn from Singapore and see how they develop. So when you look at Dubai, I mean, they're building something that's very similar to the Marina Bay Sands, though it's 2 towers, not 3. But there are a lot, and things like the ID, that was an idea they took from Singapore, went back to Dubai. And so when it comes to leadership, I think if the attitude is one of meritocracy, so you can stay for 20 years, but make sure that your people are actually benefiting from your stay.
I know.
It's just one person who's benefiting and they're in a circle. Look at Angola. Dos Santos was in office for so long, and his daughter became the richest African woman. But are people in the country benefiting from that?
No.
No.
And I always tell my friends that are not from Nigeria or Africa, like, if you find an African person that is doing well without any form of government involvement, meaning they don't have any connections to the government, they haven't received a government contract, and they're making it well in Africa, you need to, give them a hug and tell them, wow, well done. Because it's so difficult. It's very parasitic in that you have to have some form of connection to the government, like make it big in my country, for example. Get contracts and then, of course, get the money and then don't do the job, but then just keep that connection out and you keep money flowing for yourself. So that's a big issue. But I'm glad for Rwanda, given all the things they've gone through, that they have a politician, a president that is. I know he has there's some criticisms to him, but that trying to unite the country after what happened in 1994 and all that. And in addition to that, building the country back up again into a big, stable economy. I hope this is what African countries like my country can learn from, and so we can move, because there's so much potential in Nigeria, for example. It doesn't make sense that we look so good on paper, but then the lives of the people there are not really well, they're not improving. I mean, infrastructure is so. I remember when you told me when you went to Lagos how bad it was, like the roads and traffic. I don't even want to live in Lagos anymore. I feel like we need a strong nationalistic president that can boost our economy and also translate the lives of people there, because people are so hardworking, but then life is so difficult
Yeah.
living there.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make sense. It's so ridiculous. Like power isn't stable, roads are bad, like hospitals aren't good, schools aren't good, you know. Yeah. Someone had a question. I'm just gonna read it. I don't know if you can also view the questions. So it's funny how we as Africans know so little about our country, yet have details about the Western world. We can do better. Our leaders need to make policies that will favor the masses and encourage local small-scale businesses. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I feel like from what I've learned about institutions around the world, a good economy is an economy that empowers people. You know, good education, providing a lot of breaks, and providing the right infrastructure for them to grow. Because as the citizens go bigger, the country flourishes. But for countries like that are very extractive, like my country, they know that empowering the citizens could topple the government, so they just let them wallow in whatever state that might be. So that was a good point.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you, Sister Betsy, yeah, for putting that out. Yeah, because I was so ashamed to know that I knew so much about American politics before I even started knowing more about Nigeria and how our constitution was made. Until I moved to the US, I didn't know so much about Nigeria, because you know, they just don't teach you to care. And I think it's a way of them just trying to put you in the dark. And so you don't even know what your rights are, what, things can be done. Because it seems like a hopeless situation unless you leave the country and then start seeing it from afar, like, oh, our country is, messed up. So anyways, so you went from University of Zambia and then you became a Rhodes Scholar. If anyone has read your book, they will understand how that happened. But maybe you should just tell us a little bit what being a Rhodes Scholar entailed, and how long was that for? And
So,
congratulations, by the way. I feel like that's a really big deal.
yeah, thank you very much. No, it was a big deal for me because the Rhodes Scholarship is still the most prestigious scholarship in the world. I'm biased, but I still believe it is when you look at all the people who've been Rhodes Scholars. And so it was a great opportunity for me to go to Oxford, read PPE, and also meet some amazing people in my class and classes before mine, and some of the opportunities we had to meet some world leaders. So it was great also to be an ambassador for my country because funny enough, Cecil Rhodes made his fortune in South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. And a lot of people
Yep,
don't
yep.
realize that. And that's why we were called Northern Rhodesia. And so it was always funny for me talking to some American scholars because they'd say to me, why are you a Rhodes Scholar? And I'm like, why are you a Rhodes Scholar? This is my money that brings you to Oxford. And so that education and getting people to understand and appreciate the sacrifice that my people, South Africans, Zimbabweans made to build this fortune was actually an amazing opportunity. So I did it for 2 years. The Rhodes Scholarship is two with an optional third year, but I started working after I did PPE.
Great.
And by the way,
And
there's
then,
now a scholarship, Rhodes Scholarship for West Africans as well. I should probably say that while I'm on the call, but from this year on, there's now an opportunity for someone from West Africa to apply. So I'm not sure. The selection's happening next month. So you'll be able to hear who has gotten it from West Africa.
oh, that's great. Um, well, I hope someone listening to this can give themselves a chance to apply and get that done. So you went to Oxford and you studied philosophy, politics, and economics. Well, that's like three huge degree right there. What was the inspiration behind studying PPE degree at Oxford?
The PPE is one of the most well-known programs at Oxford. And the reason I did that is because my background was in economics, but I've always loved politics just because my parents were diplomats and in the government. and I've been surrounded by politicians my whole life. So I wanted to read certain modules in politics. I focused on understanding systems of government, and my case studies were on the US, the UK, and France. Because they're different parliamentary versus presidential systems. But also, my
Yeah.
favorite program was my favorite course was political sociology, which was about the psychology of elections. So that's something that's always fascinated me, and understanding how people get elected. And so every time it's
Psychology. Okay.
Zambia,
Okay.
so every time it's election in
Uh,
Zambia, I always do some commentary because I try to do projections to see how the vote will go. It's not very hard. I mean, it's not very easy to do that because you don't really know in a country, especially across Africa, there's no ideology. It's all in personality.
no.
So it's really
No.
hard
No.
to determine who's going to win. I mean, a popular song like Dnuna Reverse will get an illiterate person in the village who doesn't understand anything to do with
Exactly. Just give them
to
some
vote for
money.
to vote for
Yeah.
you. And
Yeah.
it's that basic. It's not about Roe versus Wade. It's not about your
No.
national
Gun
security
control
policy.
or
None of that.
yeah.
Did you give
No.
me a song? Did you give me a tenge, which is our traditional cloth? Did you give me money to buy a bag of maize,
Yeah.
maize meal? That's it.
Eh, Equivalent of $30 or less can buy votes in my country. You just need to, like, put your face on a pair of sandals or on some food item and just give it to the poor people, and they just go with it. And I wouldn't blame them, because if they don't have any access to, like, food and all that, I don't necessarily condone it, but I understand it. How they can appeal to those people, and those people can give their votes away for something as rudimentary as food.
But you see, this
So
is
yeah.
why education is really important. Because our people are so illiterate, it is so easy for them to not process that, hang on, you're giving me a money, a piece of cloth, and some promises 5 years after you gave me the same story. If people were educated, they would be able to
Yep.
think through the rationale of why does it make sense for you to come and see me every 5 years? What are you doing for
Yeah.
me for the 4 years after you get elected? But because our
Yeah.
people are not educated, and I'm a big fan
Yeah.
of education, it is very hard for them to process. Like, it's such a basic
And
thing, but they struggle.
yeah, I mean, and that's why I feel like the government as a whole in my country, they're gonna keep stymieing that effort to make education really, better, because educating the masses would mean we're not gonna be allowing like buffons and clowns into the, presidency or whatever political space we're talking about here. And it's not even about, like, going to school and getting a degree. Civic education, like what the government can do for you. Most people don't
Mm,
even have an idea of it. Even people
no.
with like degrees don't have an idea of it. And so, like, I have friends they're now in the capacity to employ people. And when they tell me the tales of woes about those that are applying for jobs, and how some people cannot even put like a thought together as a cover letter, and these are people that came out of universities that have like degrees to show for it. And
And
how
they
much
can't
more someone in the
cover
village
letters.
somewhere,
They can't
say
write a
again,
cover letter.
cannot put words together. Like, if you're ready, you probably want to weep. You know, they can't represent themselves. They can't put a cover letter together. The chances are not matching up. Grammatical errors. Just, think about whatever could go wrong. Not just like a mistake here and there, but they can't even articulate when you call them for like oral interviews, like to just say, okay, tell me, defend your CV. Because sometimes you see the CV, it doesn't match the person standing in front of you, and they can't even say, like they can't like put their words together to like say how they got this and that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing in Zambia. And actually, this is one of the reasons why I wrote my book, because I used to I've always mentored young people from when I was at university myself. So people would call me and ask me to help them with, when I was a Rhodes Scholar, people would ask me to help them become a Rhodes Scholar. When I left, people would ask me to help them get jobs. So I've always had long-term mentoring relationships, but I've also coached people whenever they wanted to either get a job or interview for something. And the first thing I always say is send me a CV. And most of the CVs are terrible. If you're fresh out of university, I don't expect you to have like a 3-page CV telling me how you waited tables and or interned in a bunch of places, because at that age, your experience isn't really important. It's more about your attitude and what you're
Yeah.
and your drive. And so I would help them like with their CV, but also I would help them with interview questions. So people would actually fail an interview on the very first question, which is tell me about yourself. If you can't
I
answer that
know.
basic question properly, people switch off. And I saw this as I started doing interviews at previous jobs I had, interviewing potential candidates for internships because I used to manage interns in Zambia. And as
Yeah.
soon as they open their mouths, you could tell that how the conversation will go just on the basis of how they speak about themselves. So that's a really important question. And that was one of the catalysts for writing the book, because I started writing the CV tips and the interview tips and had the chapters on my computer. So whenever somebody asked me for help, I would literally just click
Oh, I
send
see.
them. And then when I lived in Zambia, I did CV workshops for the University of Zambia just to help kids in the economics class get ready for looking for jobs.
I mean, that's a very good thing you said. I mean, so you raised a lot of important points, and good on you for mentoring the young people. I think a lot of young people in Nigeria to require that kind of mentoring help. Because I found that so many people lie on their CVs, and you're like, you don't even speak French. Why is that on your CV? Like, they're gonna call you out on that. Like, don't lie on your CV. Don't
I
lie.
always say
Make
that.
it as like, yeah, don't lie at all. And I think one tip that I always remember that my mentor told me was, don't say you're good at Microsoft suite, like, MS Word and Excel. Take that out. Everybody can use Excel now. It's not a big deal anymore. So
That's
I think it's a
unless you're advanced, because some people are still not advanced at Excel. You'd be surprised.
exactly, unless you have like a certification, because you can do like, SAS courses and Excel courses like to get that certification, which is really tough. Then you can put that there. But if it's just, opening an Excel sheet and typing stuff on there and doing some basic commands, don't do that. I think it's a perfect time to segue into your book. Yay. So Muloongo is also an author. She recently published her book in June, and it's Millennials Guide to Work. And I've heard the story behind why she said Guido, but I'd like for you to say that again.
Oh, you want me to
Why
explain
Guido?
it? Okay, so
Yeah, the title, yeah.
when I was writing my book, I wanted a book that had a title that was about guiding millennials in some way. And so I had lived in Japan when I was a teenager. And I remember there were a lot of words in Japanese that were very similar to English. So the example I give in my YouTube video is steak. So steak is pronounced steaky, and computer is
Steak.
pronounced computer. So it's very similar. So when I was
Wait,
thinking
how did they
about
say steak again?
it's just steaky. It's literally steak, but they put like it's like an I in between the S and the T, and then
Koreans will
computer.
say steak.
So it's similar. And then in
Yeah.
computer. So it's very similar. And when I was looking for a word, I figured Japanese was my safest bet, and that's how I came up with Gaido, which really means guide. And that's why I wear this kimono, which is my Millennials Gaido Guru outfit.
Thank you for that. And I did read your book because I said I was not gonna get you on the show until I read your book, and it was a very easy read, not in a watered down way, but I found it very easy to follow through, and it confirmed a lot of stuff for me. So you already told us why you wrote the book. What I like about it, there's so many reasons why I like about it, but I like how you, in addition to like telling us what could work, you threw a lot of personal examples there. So it was also a good opportunity to get to know you better. And you talked about stuff like achievement, courage, family, happiness, and honesty. And to me, that's like the whole essence of being African, because these things are traits that I could see in an ideal person from Africa. Just that resilience and that love for family. And without giving much away, because I want people to go read it. And I've said this before on one of my episodes. Is people need to get to know themselves. Either by asking people around you, what do you think my strengths are? What do you think my weaknesses are? I think another way to do that, what you mentioned in your book, was doing personality tests. And I did my Myers-Briggs a long time ago. So I'm almost close to you. You're ENTJ, if I
Yeah,
remember.
I'm an
I
E.
am
I'm a borderline.
ENTPT.
What are
You're
you?
borderline what? I'm
I'm borderline
ENTPT.
I. ENTP.
And there's a T. The T is for trouble. Turbulence. So I'm like the debater. I'm the debater. I like to debate, and I mean, I knew that about myself. I think the thing with the personality test for me was not really beating myself down for my weaknesses, because it's just understanding that I can get to be this way and then just working on it. But I feel like you need to know what your weaknesses are as well, because you can begin to understand your tics and understand why you do things you do. And also the Gallup one, I did that probably 3 years ago. I don't know if it's gonna change, but my top 5 ones are input, strategic, individualization, activator, and learner. Those are my top
Okay.
5 ones. And yeah, yeah. So I really like that you emphasize that on the book to get to know ourselves better. And I love that you had a lot of pop culture references. Like, I was just cracking up a lot. A lot of my highlights were just were things that made me laugh a lot. So yeah, I think it's a book that many young people need to get. Not even young people, but those that are trying to make a career switch, they need to get and read as well. And you talked about how, you know, um, your passion kind of changed a lot over the years and how that formed all of that. I also liked how you talked about understanding the job market, um, and using different kinds of channels. You gave a lot of tips for building one's resume, which, that was very extensive. So if you're listening to this, I really recommend her book, because she gave a lot of examples and how to build that. And I think, because I don't want to give so much away, I want people to go
No,
read your
but you
book.
can. I'm
Um,
happy for you to talk about, because otherwise it'd be so vague for people. So, like, you talk about why I put in a lot of personal stories, and that's because I think people always assume that when you achieve certain things that it came to you very easy. So it was about
yeah.
demystifying some of the hurdles that you have to go through just to get to where you are. So one of the reason why I talk about resilience and my experience going to University of Zambia, because that fundamentally changed my personality and it really
Yeah.
refocused the way I managed my life. So I'm happy to talk about this actually on the show. It's just when my parents shipped me back to the University of Zambia when we're living in Tokyo, and I was trying to apply to universities in the U.S. And the universities I was looking at, my choices are really driven by where there were basketball players because I was really into the NBA. So I was like
So
going to
which
be a
one?
super. So I was actually thinking of going to Syracuse because at the time they were really good, and I was always an East Coast person, so I was always going to go to either New York, Pennsylvania, or DC, with the three states or places that I thought I would wind up. And so I was looking to apply in the U.S. And my aunt, who is a minister, she's still a cabinet minister now, came to Tokyo to visit us, and she said to my parents, Muloongo needs to go back to Zambia because she needs to, help her personality and develop her character. And so, against my will, I think they actually even did my application. Against my will, I was shipped off to University of Zambia, and at that time, my parents had moved to Mozambique, so at least they were close to Zambia. But I really didn't want to go because the university had a history of closing down whenever there was political unrest, and it did. It closed down the next year. But what was interesting is because the whole time we had been away, I'd gone from being the top student in my class to being, okay. Like I was average, not maybe better than average, but by my standards, I was not doing as great as I was. So my first year at university, I partied a lot with my friends, had probably the best year of my life. Had a lot of fun. My grades, I remember University of Zambia is very competitive. So in a class of 80, only 20 people got to major in economics. And I remember my name was probably a number like 16. And this is having been used to always being in the top 3 of any list. That was a bit of a shock. And so the following year, the university closed, just as I had feared, for 9 months. And my parents at the time could not afford to send me to university. It was too late. Like if I had gone when there's still diplomats, and the government would have paid, but they were back in Zambia, and so they couldn't afford to send me to school elsewhere. So I had to basically suck it up. And after 9 months of being at home, and I volunteered for 7 months with a charity, I came back to school and decided I had a new philosophy. I was going to make lemonade out of lemons. And that is really about making the most out of every situation. And so my attitude completely changed. I was like, okay, my parents have kind of let me down, and I've told them this several times, so that's fine. And I say that in my book. But I realized that I had to take control of my life. And I came
Yeah.
back. I graduated at the top. I was second in my class that year. got a scholarship with the
Yeah.
central bank. And then 2 years later, I was a Rhodes Scholar. So every time I feel like my life is not going okay, I always remember that experience because it taught me that a lot of the way we respond, the way our life evolves is really our response to certain events. So whenever something happens to you that's not great, you can decide to let it, paralyze you and make you feel like your life is over, your life is not going great, or you can say, right, this has happened, and I will either make plan B, C, D, or I will accept it and c'est la vie. So I've learned to look at things as not a defeat, but as a challenge that I need to overcome. And that's sort of the inspiration I want to give the young people today, because a lot of them, life has been very predictable, very easy. And when they come to the real world, it's a bit of a shock because things don't always go the way you want it to. So I'm sharing my experiences because people look at me today and say, oh, you're so lucky. You've traveled to these places. Your work is going great. And I'm looking at myself and I'm like, no, it has not been easy. So that was for real.
I like that. I like that. Thanks for sharing that. And is anything, the moral of that story is whatever your hands find to do, do it and keep moving. Keep keeping it going. Like don't, yeah. Who would have thought that you going to University of Zambia and even with the strike you guys had, something as monumental as a Rhodes Scholarship could, come out of that?
True. I don't think I'd have been a Rhodes Scholar if I went to Syracuse. I probably would have, been an average student and got an average job. And yeah, so life is
Live an
pretty,
average life, yeah.
yeah, but life is pretty good. I have to say I'm grateful for where I am today, but it hasn't been easy. And one thing I always say to people is that everyone's path is different. And I say this, I think, in chapter 6 of my book, that stay in your own lane.
Stay in your
And
lane. Life isn't, yes,
different.
yes.
Because I
Yeah.
had friends who, when I graduated from Oxford, most of my friends read law. And I worked for a company that I really loved and I learned a lot from, but they didn't pay so well. And a lot of my friends were getting paid three times what I was making when we were 2, 3 years out of university. And it really bugged me because people were buying houses and were doing really well financially. Well, guess what? Today I make more than my friends, but my journey just took a lot longer than theirs did.
Yeah.
And it's just telling people that everyone's path is different and you need to be
Yeah.
patient
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. And it reminds me of one of the things you talked about in your book was, envy and how when that, I mean, we've all gone through that and I can relate to that. How if you let that consume you, you're gonna be losing the best part of you. When things happen for people, especially things you think should happen for you, be happy for them and just, focus on your work and try to be the best at what you're doing and don't let, envy get the best part of you. There are also things that some things that I took out from your book was as a Nigerian, that is, and I think a lot of Africans can resonate with this. We tend to choose our jobs, but we forget that we have to choose our bosses too. You know, and I liked how you talked about the attributes of a good boss. Treats you with respect, supports your ambition, has your back, is honest, is transparent, gives credit for your job. And that sounds very positive, but most of us don't think about that. We just want a job that pays the bills. And then we find ourselves in toxic environments where we're not even allowed to bring our creative side out. And you start thinking, like, if I quit this job, I'm not going to be able to have money to, like, do the
Yeah.
things I'm supposed to do. So your book actually gave us ways to handle that. So if you're curious to know how to deal with a bad boss, you should, read that side of the book. I mean, buy the whole book. And it does not entail talking back to your boss or like, talking behind their backs. And
Yeah.
I
Oh, it's
like
really
I
important.
like
I mean, just on the boss thing, because this is advice I got probably 2 years into my first job. And someone was saying to me, always choose your boss and your job. And people say, oh, but how do you know? And sometimes you really can't know, but you should always do your due diligence, right? So we do our due diligence on, like when people are about to date, you ask people, what is this person like? You can do that by engaging people who work in that organization. And now with everybody's Facebook profile, LinkedIn profile, Twitter profile,
LinkedIn profile. Yes.
yeah, you can actually go online and Google this person, see if this is somebody you think you can work with. But I think it's super important because we spend so much time at work that if you're not working for somebody you like, you respect, and sometimes you don't necessarily have to like them, but you can respect them. But if you don't have
Respect
anything
them. Yeah.
And if they respect you back as well, because some people you just don't gel, right? But if the relationship is such that you're learning, you have mutual respect, you're getting things done, that's fine. But when you have someone you don't like, who doesn't respect you, doesn't do anything for you, that's not a place you want to go to every
It's
day.
not.
Week.
It's
So
not.
people should actually think about this. And it's not just about bad boss, by the way. One thing that I learned as well, my first organization, was when you work for somebody who's not just a good boss, but you need to work for a superstar. So it got to a point where what I used to do whenever I was looking at the way my organization in the UK work is, HR will come to you and say, oh, do you want to work for, there's a couple of jobs. And the first thing I ask is, tell me who the job is for. How is this person perceived in the organization? Are they a rising star? Because if you work for someone who's perceived to be a rising star, they will typically take their people with them. So don't work with somebody who's got, a bad reputation, no power. Actually, no, power is wrong, because I'm not talking about working for people who are very senior, but people who are going places and people who are well respected within the organization. So it's just giving little tips like that about the kind of people you want to work with or for if you want to succeed.
Yeah, that's very true. Very, very true. And along that line, you talked about having high friends in low places. Like, for example, the PAs and people that actually work there, like maybe the cleaners, the janitors, the support staff, basically, being friends with them and not just overlooking them. Because sometimes they have tons of knowledge about the people you want to know more about. And they can also give you that, information you need.
Yeah, so it's two things, right? It's not just the fact that they're actually valuable, as most people treat them really badly. And for me, that's something that really upsets me. It's usually
Yeah.
I try to look out for PAs because they're always treated really badly by most people. And they're actually really powerful and really great. But also it's about human nature, right? These are people as well, right? So I don't understand why people will say, oh, why are you inviting them to meeting? I'm like, why not? Like, what's the big deal? But it's about treating everybody with respect regardless of the rank that you hold. And that's
Yeah.
something I've always been a big believer in. Even when I've been a junior person, a graduate, it doesn't mean that I can't lead. It doesn't mean that I can't engage. It doesn't mean that I don't have ideas. And that principle I apply across the board, like up, down. You need to treat everybody with respect.
Yeah, I think there's also that thing about I forgot. I'm paraphrasing here. Like you can tell a lot about someone's character by the way they treat those that they can't expect anything back from.
Absolutely.
Like how nice you are with people. And then finally, from the book, I like the principle of managing upwards, sideways, and downwards. I learned the managing up like 4 years ago when I did my internship with a biotech company, and my boss told me, you're gonna teach me how to manage you better. I'm like, how do I do that? That was my first like real job in the US. And so I learned how to manage people through that. I haven't really gotten like a whole hang of it, like managing your boss and helping them and getting the best out of them for you. So I like that your book really focused on that. And also that managing downwards, I never really thought about that. And then the sideways part with your peers and growing with them and yeah, so read the book. There's so many tips and just how to thrive at work and how to um if I get a job, basically like putting your resume together, representing yourself better, and also building your social capital. We forget about knowing the right people. You know, it's
Yeah.
not just an African thing that you know somebody. Really, even here, like sincerely, even here, you need to know the right people. You need to build your connection because people they would rather hire somebody that they can vouch for by another person than someone they don't know. You know, because that's where your references come into place. They want to see how good you are and if you're really what you say you are. So start building your capital, start building your social capital, getting to know people. I mean, I always advocate going to conferences because in my field of work, that's where you get to meet other people and also publishing your work as well and connecting with people on LinkedIn and finding mentors, finding sponsors, finding people that can, help you grow professionally and, sometimes even personally because there's no way not sometimes like separate your professional life from your personal life. It's still life, it's still the same person. So I don't know
So
if you had
what
any final thoughts
about
on
Africans is
that.
that I always think that the more qualifications you have and the more experience is all you need for a job. But actually, what most employers are looking for is fit. So, given that if you apply for a job, in most cases, everyone else applying for a job will have similar experience and qualifications to you. The key differentiator is whether they think that they can work with you 5 days a week, 10 plus hours a day. I think that's the most important thing that people forget. So they think it's your paper, but actually it's your personality and whether you gel.
It is.
So that
It
emphasis
is.
on getting to know people and having people say to testify what your character is like is actually way more important than your CV.
Yep. Yep. Very true. Very true. And you have to know this lesson or you're going to learn the very hard way. I mean, basically, I feel like your degree will open the door for you. But then to get invited to sit at the table, you need to have the right kind of, people on your Rolodex. The door might be open for you, but you might not get a seat at the table. And getting a seat on the table will mean knowing the right people. Yeah.
True.
And then,
right? So sometimes you don't even know there's a door. So in this day and age, a lot of people don't even publish jobs. But this is the thing, right? A lot of jobs don't get published. I can tell you when I'm looking for a role internally. So in my bank, you can move around every 2 to 3 years. When I'm looking for a job internally, I literally send out a bunch of emails to people saying, hey, my window will be open in a couple of months or in a year.
wow.
And I'm thinking about, but that's how it works, right? So let me know what you think is going to be happening. And then people say, well, actually, I think this person might be moving or this role might be coming up. And it's about information flow. So I'm actually reading a really great book right now. I'll show you on the screen if it comes.
Which one?
Like this book called
Exponential Organizations.
Yeah. So this book is about how information flow is changing how organizations evolve. And it's the reason why a lot of the traditional organizations like Kodak and Nokia collapsed. But the point is that information is really important. And in the job market, information sometimes is not readily available. So that's why I was saying sometimes you don't even know there's a door unless you talk to people.
That's true.
And you have to spread your network and talk to as many people as possible. And I'm not shy talking to anybody, right? I've linked up with people on LinkedIn because I've seen their profile. It's been interesting. And I dropped them a note. When I had premium subscription, I would send them an email. If I don't, then I just connect and hope that they accept. And when they do accept, I'm like, hey, I like your CV. What do you do? It would be great to chat. I'm not shy doing that. And it's not because I actually want a job from this person, but I'm like, there's something about that person that's interesting. So I want to connect with them. So people should try to make an effort to connect with random strangers because we have a tendency to only talk to the people that we know or that we're comfortable with. And you need to be able to talk to everybody. And that's why my managing up, down, sideways is really important.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. I mean, I got my job through my professor who introduced me to her colleague at a conference when I was a grad student. And she's like, here, this is my grad student. She's going to be graduating soon. She needs a job. And the person emailed me about a position that was going to come up. It hadn't even been published yet when she sent me the email about it. And I work for that company now. And I can just imagine if I did not, I wasn't at the right place at the right time. And if my mentor wasn't confident in introducing me to her colleague about this job. So yes, I do agree with that. I mean, I had good grades. I have a good CV, but at the end of the day, it boiled down to knowing the right person. And so I was able to advocate for myself to get into that door. So yeah.
I think the whole point of the book was just to, because I can tell you, people always ask, how do I get ahead? And that question for me is always amusing. I used to ask it myself, by the way. So I'd sit down when I started working, I'd ask my mentor, so what do I need to do to succeed? And he would go back to the basics. And I'm like, no. You're telling me to do my job and deliver and build my brand, but that's basic stuff. Like, what is the secrets to success? It really is very basic things. It's make sure you actually have a personal brand. So what do people say about you when you're not in the room is like one big important thing. Get your work done. Like people will talk about you whether or not you're able to get things done. That's super important. And then it's also about your visibility, your networks, and all of that stuff. But the book is supposed to help young people actually start building the foundation for a successful career and demystifying what people need to do to actually get to where they want to get to.
I like that. And I like that your book, you talked about how the job market changing and how, for example, it's a generational shift in that the different kind of people, and these are the kind of things they have that might seem like, oh, we don't understand them, but here's why you don't understand them. So you gave a deep background about millennials and why people should stop, giving them flack for their temperamental style, and how actually some of the strengths they have can be harnessed to make them more productive. So it's a very good book to read. I've posted the link below. Go get her book. I read it.
Oh, yeah, I
I
also got
enjoyed
my
reading
book, by
it.
the way. I should at least show my
Oh,
book.
I had the Kindle copy. That's so nice. Whoa.
Now, this is a
Oh, there's a Chinese. What does Japanese word say?
well, no,
Good
this is
luck.
actually a Chinese character, and it says "good luck" is equal to preparation and opportunity. So I
That's true.
actually
And I think you gave that example with the Equatorial Guinea guy, right? The swimmer.
exactly. So I can actually give this. Oh, do we have time? I can actually give that
Yeah,
example.
sure. Go ahead and say
So
it. Go ahead and say it.
people,
Yeah.
so people. One of the funniest videos I've ever watched is the 2000 Sydney Olympics, where the swimmer from Equatorial Guinea was in fielded in one. What do they call them? When you have one group of a heat. He was in a heat with two other guys from I think Kazakhstan and some other country, three countries that typically don't do anything in swimming or win medals in swimming. And when they were about to start swimming, the two were disqualified, so he had to swim on his own. And this is somebody who had never swum a very long distance in any pool in Equatorial Guinea, and he managed to do it with great difficulties. I mean, you have to watch this YouTube video; it is hilarious. And the only reason he finished is because the crowd, which was really great, saw that he was struggling, and they started cheering him on, and he made it, but in like a long time. Like he probably was like a minute slower than your typical Olympic gold medalist. And he was so happy because he had actually finished the race. And of course, he was disqualified. But what was really funny about the story is that he had an opportunity to actually qualify to the next round. But because he had
Yeah.
never prepared, and chance happens to be that he was the only person competing against himself, he missed out on an opportunity to actually do well. And the irony is that he was so inspired by his performance at the 2000 Olympics that he trained for 4 years, qualified for the 2004 Olympics, but
For
then
Olympic,
he
yeah.
couldn't make it because he couldn't get a visa. So the whole point of talking about, a good luck, opportunity, and preparation is that unless those three elements are there, you will
Yeah.
not be able to succeed. So that's why I love having this. I actually wanted to get a medallion made with this because I'm a true believer in that.
It looks like a tattoo you can have on your skin as well, as a reminder, if you're really into that kind of
I
stuff.
don't have tattoos. I'm not a tattoo person, but yeah, if I ever did decide to have a tattoo, I probably would do this. But yeah, so this is my book. It's not a big book, so people always worry that
It's not.
books so long. It's deliberately only 100 pages, actually 101 pages, and that's because when I read, I was inspired by Who Moved My Cheese, which was a very short book, but it was packed with
Yeah.
thought-provoking material. So I just wanted a small book that people can read. I know someone who carries this in her bag to work, like one of the graduates, and she turns to it whenever she's thinking about her career. So yeah, so please buy my book.
Yes, and I read it. So there's also the e-version as well, the Kindle version.
Yes.
Just two last questions to you. I know when we talked, you told me about how living in Singapore is making you think more about Africa. So I just want to ask this: why do you think being exposed to Asia has made you more optimistic about Africa? Basically, what can Africa learn from Asian countries like China, Singapore? I mean, the four tigers, whatever they call them, the big four countries. I think Taiwan, Korea, Japan, and Singapore.
Yeah, so I would say Singapore, South Korea, and even China for me are really exciting because historically, South Korea, Singapore, when we gained independence in Zambia, we're richer than Singapore and I think South Korea as well. Thailand as well is quite interesting. And so when you see what African countries that we're further ahead have achieved compared to the Asian countries, we are lagging behind. But I think the cultural elements as well were interesting. So when I go to the UK and the US, it just feels they've been developing for a really long time. They've gone through industrial revolution. So I don't really connect with that. But when I came to Singapore and I went to Thailand, I was blown away because I thought this is something that we can do in Africa. And you go to the markets, very similar. I went to Jakarta and I was so excited by Jakarta. It's a crazy city. Actually, it reminds me of Lagos, by the way. Jakarta
Oh,
is,
really?
yeah, it's crazy.
That's Indonesia, right?
It's Indonesia. It's the capital of Indonesia. It's
Yeah.
it's got It's similar to like what do you call the yellow tuk-tuks in Nigeria?
Downfall?
No, the name for a governor. Keke
Keke
Kwesi.
Marwa?
Yes. No,
Keke
no, no.
Marwa?
The little tuk-tuks.
Mawar, Mawar.
Yes, that. So, and then it's just hectic. There's traffic and there's an energy about it. It's also one of the most populous countries in Asia. So when I went to Jakarta, I was blown away by some of the new fintech ideas they have. There's one company called Gojek. So if you're actually online, I will type it now so you can see what it is. I would say go and check out what these guys are doing, because this is something that I would love to, if I can, do in Zambia. But there's so much that we can learn from, because their societies, their culture is very similar to what we
Similar to
have
us, yeah.
in Africa. And so I wish I hadn't wasted so much time living in London. 10 years was a long time. I want to spend, another 2 years or so in Singapore, and look at what Indonesia is doing, what China is doing, especially in the fintech space. It's just really, it's incredible.
And I know you want to move back home soon and live
I
there
do.
again.
This is I keep telling people this is my last stint abroad. I think I want to go back to Zambia and actually do something. So I've enjoyed being an expat. I've enjoyed traveling the world and working in international organizations. But I reached that point where my passion is about going home and doing something meaningful. I was reading a story about Mo Dewji, the Tanzanian guy, billionaire who's been kidnapped, and I really hope he's found. But what his father said to him to bring him back from New York when he was working in New York, and his father is a businessman in Tanzania, and said to him that, you're spending your time working in America and helping to develop the American economy, when you should be coming home and he said, you're making pennies. This is what I thought was interesting. He said, you're making pennies in America and helping to develop America, when you should be working at home and making your fortune back home. And I really think that's actually not just a message that Mo received many years ago, but it's a message for all of us who are living abroad, is that unless we go back and help to develop our country, and I'm not talking about going back to be politicians, because that's always seems to be like the default. Like, we go back and be politicians. No, let's go back and be the next, Jack Ma. Let's go back and be the Richard Branson. So why aren't we aspiring business leaders? We all just seem to want to go back to be politicians, and I don't think that's right.
Very true, very true. And that's a message of hope. And I don't have any plans moving back home anytime soon until I see some things in place. But let me know how it goes. What should we expect from Muloongo next? Like, what's the next big thing apart from moving back to Zambia?
Oh, yeah, that's still TBD, but I'm working on my second book. So, I promised that I would do a Millennials Guide to Life and Love. So that is, it's a work in progress. I might put it on hold though, because I've been inspired by the politics in Africa to write a political thriller. So my political thriller.
About that.
Yeah, so I'm writing a political thriller. It's based on a book I started writing in Zambia when I moved in 2012. So I moved to Zambia with that whole Africans go back and develop your country. I lasted 2 years. And that's probably because I was very naive about what to expect, and it was a bit of a culture shock. So I left, and now I think I'm mentally prepared to go back. But
you sure?
Well, I will see. I mean, I might be back in Singapore.
Never say never.
That's true. I mean, you have to try, right? But the book is called Singing the Zed Blues. So Zed is short for Zambia. And the point of the book is that it actually, so I've said to some people that my dream, if I ever serve in politics, is to be the Minister of Finance. So I'm basically playing out my fantasy as my character, like me, lives abroad, but she's actually, so one thing you read in the book is that instead of being a banker, I actually wanted to be a professor and read political economy. So basically in this book, I play out what my life would have been like had I gone to Stanford and done a PhD in political economy. But my character still goes to Stanford, does a PhD in political economy, and then the president asks her to come back to Zambia and be the Minister of Finance. So it's playing out that, and she becomes president, by the way. So it's like my political fantasy about, what I would do to change my country if I was president. So I'm gonna write a book on that. and hopefully publish it in Q1 next year. I'm not putting a date this time.
That's good. Just let us know when you publish that. We can bring you back on again and talk
Oh
about your
yeah,
book.
and I want to publish it around the time when the elections, Nigeria elections are on. And just
Ah,
I was in Lagos actually in February 2015 when the first when Goodluck postponed the election. So
yeah.
I spent a week in Lagos. So I got a good hanging out with a cab driver who took me to work and back. He gave me a good rundown on Nigerian politics. So I'm actually going to feature a little bit of that, and I won't tell you what aspects. You have to read the book.
Okay, looking forward to that. And finally, do you have any questions for me? You curious to know about maybe me, the show, or any of the episodes you've listened to?
Yeah, but what has been your favorite aspect about hosting the show? Like, what is it that you get out of doing the show?
I get to talk to people like you. I get to talk to people, and I get them to share their stories. I've had people that will tell me, but I don't have a story. Like my life is boring. I'm like, let me help you out, and I, give them the point, and then the lights. You can see the light like go on their head, and it's just talking to people and connecting to people. I haven't had a very easy life, but I'm really honored to know that we're all in this together. We struggle with different things, but if we're to share each other's stories, we can encourage one another and say, hey, this is how I did it, and this is how it worked for me. So I like the idea of connecting people together and yeah, just sharing stories. In the past, it was just in vacuums. Like I'll talk to people, I'm like, oh my God, like that's a wonderful story. Like you've gone through a lot. I wish there was, this could help somebody else. So I'll call up the person like, hey, I have someone going through what you went through. Is it okay for me to like, tell them about you and you can talk to them and encourage them? I'm like, sure. I hardly had anyone turn me down, say, no, I don't want to share with anybody. Because usually when people get out of this kind of work, they want to share. So I thought to myself, rather than just doing those kind of things in vacuum, why not make it like a bigger platform and have people just share the stories? So yeah, talking to people and being encouraged by people, I like that. And I just like that it's also an opportunity to showcase, our culture as Africans and also the Asian part of it because we don't really get to hear a lot about the positive things that happen in our lives. Because Africans all over the world, they're just like people all over the world. That we come from a continent that is still relatively developing doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that we're like, backward people. I want us to be able to tell our stories, the good, the bad, and the ugly ourselves, and not wait for like the big media to manipulate stories and things like that. So yeah.
That's true. I think we do need to be more positive about our continent. So I think one of the funniest videos I saw was when Trump called our country's a bad word, and
Shit
the
hole.
Nigerian guy. I didn't know I could say that. And one
You
of the
could say that.
funniest videos I saw, which was actually a Nigerian person, said, "Why are people complaining? Nigeria is a shithole," which I thought was
I saw
hilarious
that tweet.
because I was like, "Our country is out," and I was like, "Yeah, this is why people are saying it's a shithole. We don't do enough to promote our own countries, and so how
Yeah.
can the not have an opinion of us that's negative? We don't
Yeah.
do it to promote our own country. So we're all
We
trying to
don't.
get out, or if we're there, we're complaining. And I'm guilty of that, by the way. I always complain about, our politicians. And I think my learning has been I need to balance the criticism on Twitter of our government and what's happening with actually promoting like the positive stuff about my country. So it's actually something
Yeah.
I'm taking it upon myself and being a bit more
Yeah.
objective as well. Just because I don't like the party that's in power doesn't mean that I can't acknowledge when they do something that's good, but also sometimes they need help because when you look at the caliber of our leaders, a lot of them are terrible. I mean, they were not a success before they became politicians. So why are
Nope.
we surprised that they're terrible? So sometimes
Yeah.
they need help. So I'm trying to be more balanced about what I say about Zambia. And I think as Africans, we need to become ambassadors for our countries.
I like that. I mean, that's why I do the show. And in talking to some of my friends that I know Africans, they'll tell you, "Oh my gosh, you guys have that," because there's so many things they love about our countries. But if we don't share them, those kind of stories, all they just hear about is the negatives. Like the way we're so family oriented, the way we're so loyal to people, like that.
Yeah.
Africans are loyal. They were very, they got you. People can have your back easily. The way we focus more on the relationship, and this is a general statement, by the way. not like, pursuit of money, but we're really good at building relationships and, building family along the way, and also getting people together. We're very good in most social settings. And so when they see that in you as an African, that's one way you can also advocate for your country and you can uphold those values. Nigeria, for the most part, hasn't had a very good reputation here in the US. And I found myself under a lot of pressure to be a good Nigerian because,
Yeah.
with the whole 419 scheme and, and I would hate that someone just see me for the first time and that's what they'll think about. Like I'm trying to take advantage of them. So yes, it did come with a lot of pressure to try to prove myself twice as much, to be let them know, hey, I'm not gonna take your money and I'm not here to like, swindle you. But it's an
But you know,
opportunity to
one
just
thing
get
I have to
people
say,
together.
one thing
Yeah.
I have to say about Nigerians, right? Okay, so yes, you guys do have that reputation for, Nigerian. Are they legit or they're going to try and do something shady, which is unfortunate. I'll tell you something. When I went to Lagos for the first time, I sort of started understand the energy that Nigerians have. I left saying, okay, I get why you guys are the way you are. You're hustlers. You're hustlers. The work ethic in Nigeria is unreal. So I just left Zambia, moved to Joburg, and then I went to Lagos on a work trip. And the way people work and the seriousness with which people take their job is really impressive. So I don't think Nigeria needs a PR, actually a major PR job
I
because
know. Do
job
you want to
is
sign
not
up for the
enough.
job? We can't pay you a lot though.
No, you guys can't pay me a lot. You can pay me a lot. But I had so much fun in Lagos. I spent a week there. And just the energy, picking up the energy, working with people, really smart people, really go-getters, hustlers, know their stuff, but your reputation outside is not great. And your houses were amazing. So I was there for a weekend because I'd flown to Nigeria from a meeting in Abidjan. So I got to spend the weekend there and because there's nothing to do, there's no tourism, so you guys need to work on that. So my
I
cab driver
know.
he took me around Banana Island and Okey and was pointing out people's homes, like I saw where Tinubu lives, and
Yeah.
a lot of the interesting Nigerian families at Anuga's house or compound. So he was pointing that out, and I was like, you guys have amazing homes, you have amazing clubs, you have great restaurants. I saw more G wagons in Lagos than I saw anywhere until I moved to Dubai, which was shocking. I was like, you
And the
guys
roads
are
are bad.
roads are bad. I'm like, and then you've got no power. So I was staying at Intercontinental, and the power went at least every hour. And I'm like, guys, get your act together. But honestly, I think Nigeria really undersells itself, and people are distracted by the noise around the 419 and all those scandals. But it's actually a
Yeah.
really fun place. So you guys need to
I
do your
mean,
PR.
yeah, we have bad people everywhere. Even here in the US, you have people that will scam you. But I just don't want, I never want people to just think of Nigerians as, people that are just out to like get you. There are good people everywhere, there are bad people everywhere, bad people doing bad things. But yes, the Nigerian spirit is very resilient. And it's because we live in a shithole country. Nothing works there, and the people have to like do twice as much. No, seriously, it doesn't make sense. I'm going home next month and I'm a bit dreading it because things are gonna get to me. Like the power, the bad roads and everything. I'm already getting cranky. And my trip is not until like a month's time. I'm getting cranky already because life is hard there, but the people are amazing.
Well, you
And
see, for
that's
me,
just thanks to the
Zambia is different. So I really enjoyed living in Zambia. I struggled working
really,
in Zambia. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So this was my tension. I'm really happy at home and at the weekend, but I'm miserable 9 to 5 because our work ethic is not great. Whereas everywhere else, it's like, okay, work is great, but you don't have your family, you don't have your friends. So it's about finding that balance. But Zambia is a great place to live. Like I enjoyed living there. I just need to figure
wow.
out the job thing before I move back.
Maybe I need to come live in Zambia or maybe move to Zambia because
Come
no,
down
it's
here.
not fun living in Nigeria, I'll tell you that. But the people make up for it. So yeah,
It's not fun
it's
if
a
you don't
win-win
have peace.
situation.
That's the thing. I think everywhere with the right amount of money is okay.
Yeah, but then right amount of money in Lagos, you're still not shielded from so many things. You're still going to end up all driving, whether a beat up car or G-Wagon on the same set of bad roads. You still have to like put on your generator and then the sound and the noise pollution that comes with that. Like the money helps to ease a little bit of the trouble, but it's still the same misery like everybody goes through, just in different proportions. So yeah. All right. Well, there's time for one more question if you have any, and if you don't have, that's fine. But that was a good question about the show. Is there anything else you'd like to know, or we're done? Are you good?
I'm good. No, thanks for having me. I will definitely come back when Singing the Zed Blues is out and we can talk about politics and around the time of the election. So I'm really keen to see if PDP is coming
Buhari?
back. No,
I don't know.
I'm
See,
not crazy
as far
about
as
the
I'm
election.
concerned, they're all, I mean, PDP is coming back again, telling us stuff. I mean, APC has been in power for how many years? Nothing much has been done. I think it's time we just, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. It's not
Cancel
gonna be either
politicians?
of those two people.
Huh?
It's just, the people have like selective amnesia. Like PDP wants to come back again. They're all the same to me. There's no difference. I'm
So
sorry to
are
say
you
that.
going to vote? Are you voting?
I can't vote because I couldn't register. I have to have gone back home to register. You
Yeah,
can't
I
vote,
went
you know.
home to register to vote actually of the last election, and everyone
Well,
was saying,
good for you.
yeah, well, everyone was saying, well, this is the thing with elections, right? And I'm glad you brought this up because everyone always expects someone else to do the right thing. And I said, people were saying to me, because I voted for the opposition, and they said to me, oh, you wasted money flying. And I said, you know what? For me, it's really important that I cast my vote. And my conscience is clear as well, that I cast my vote. And so when people are saying, oh, these guys are terrible. I'm like, well, yeah, we told you that. But I think it's really important for everybody to take it upon themselves to vote for the people that they want to vote for. And if you're not happy with the people, then stand for politics, stand for election. But we can't have
Yep.
it both
Yep.
ways, right?
No, I do agree with people, at least getting your voters registration, getting that card, and then using your voice, your vote as your voice. But don't let your voice be bought. Like, how much are they gonna give you really? Are you that cheap? You know? And if your selected candidate didn't win, guess what? Give the other candidate hell. Hold them accountable. Look at what they said during the election. Make sure their rhetorics are matching the action. If they said they're going to do these 7 things, keep talking about it. Keep engaging people online. Keep engaging your constituents from the local government because corruption is everywhere, even from the local government down to the federal government. So it's not just the president. The president is just, a big issue, but then the main problem is distilled down from the seat of the federal government because there's a lot more happening in the local government level because that's a grassroots right there. But you don't have them doing what they said they were gonna do. So hold your leaders accountable, dear people. Listen to this, especially if you're from Africa. All right. Thank you so much, Muloongo. It was really nice chatting with you and, getting to know your story. Thanks for sharing a lot more about yourself and also about your book, which, I'm also saying again, go check out her book on Amazon. It's not very expensive to buy. And I
No,
read it. It's a very good read. If you're listening to this as a millennial, or you're married to one, or you're friends with one, or you have one as a kid in your house or kids,
exactly.
get them the
Actually,
book.
people
Yeah.
who've been buying this the most are parents of millennials, which is
Good.
really
Maybe you can understand your kids better and help them out. I don't know. When I think about millennials, I think about like a word I don't want to get associated with, but I think I'm a millennial.
I think you
I
are.
think I think I am, but when I'm like, no, don't call me a millennial. No, don't. But I don't care. Whatever. But I like the book, so a millennial read the book and liked the book, so go read it. So yeah, that was the show, everyone. Thanks for listening and have a wonderful night rest in
Thank you so much
Singapore.
for having me. Yeah, it's past 11 here, but thanks a lot for having me, and we should definitely talk politics on the next show.
We should talk more. And I have a lot to learn from you because I don't know a lot about African politics, but talking to you, I can learn more and then improve my own knowledge base as well. And I
Cool.
like your idea of just sipping red wine, but it's too early for me. My day just started.
I just finished my last bit of this amazing wine, so I'm gonna have a good night's rest today.
Good for you. And so catch you on the other side. And thank you so much for coming in the
Thank
show.
you, and thanks everyone for watching.
All right, bye.
Bye.